All right, we are live. Um, this is House Money Fantasy, and I'm Rob Schwarz, and we are bringing you our first of hopefully many PGA breakdown podcasts or video casts. I am joined here today by a good friend. We've developed a pretty good relationship over the last year and a half. Kevin Cutillo from FLAFFL House. How are you doing today?
Doing well, Rob. How's it going?
It's been a long week. It's been a long couple. But I've been doing well with my PGA stuff, so that's good.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. I'm extra tired this week, obviously. Still recovering from as you can see, the championship from this weekend. So that's good. I'm a big Patriots fan. Obviously, I'm a season ticket holder, which is great. So it's been a good season for us, and or for me as a fan, I should say. They did all the work, but we had a lot of fun, and Super Bowl couldn't have been stranger, and I could not have been more surprised from both the beginning and then the end. So
it was definitely a good game. When it was 28-3 at one point, it was kind of getting boring. So
yep.
As a fan with no hat in the ring, I'm a Bears fan, and I could have cared less either way. The only reason I was rooting for Atlanta was because they had never won before.
Sure.
And I am not a Martellus Bennett fan. So
that's fair. I got you. I mean, look, we love him here because he played great. He filled in for Gronk and did exactly what he was supposed to do. I could see, he's hilarious. The guy's hilarious from a non-football standpoint. I think he's great, and he's going to be good on TV someday. But yes. I can see how his act would wear thin, pretty quickly, particularly if he's not happy. I mean, obviously he was happy here.
Yeah, that was the main thing. He did not like Jay Cutler. So
yeah, I can't blame him there. If I were you, I would share that in common with him.
I've always been a Jay Cutler supporter. It's been a downfall. It's a big flaw of mine. But he has to go. So I really want to get rid of him this year.
Well, hey, you give us the third pick, we'll give you Garoppolo.
Yeah, it's too steep. Second,
I agree.
Second round, and maybe the first next year.
Yeah, that's actually, that's not a bad deal, and I'm sure the Patriots would take that, and I'm sure that'll be something that's up there on the list of deals that they get offered if that is something the Bears throw out there, because. I think if you can get a 1 and a 2 for a guy that played a game and a half, you're in good shape. So,
well, congratulations. I know you and I
did
disagree on a couple things when it comes to your team. We discussed that, but we won't get into that on this podcast.
Yeah, we'd be here all night.
Yeah, pretty much. It might become a little bit of a shouting match. So
that's right.
So golf. I got to admit, I love to play golf. I rarely follow it as far as watching it on television. This is the first year that I've actually played PGA Fantasy on DraftKings. I've played 2 out of the 3 weeks so far. It's fun. It makes it a lot more interesting. I'm learning guys' names. I probably pronounce them very much incorrectly.
Sure.
But fantasy just makes sports more fun. It really does.
Absolutely. There's no question about it. Look, I'm a golf fan. I love golf. Playing it, although I don't know that what I do you can actually consider playing golf. I sort of more just pretend like I'm playing golf because I'm very bad at it. But, I love the sport in general. I've been watching golf for a number of years. I remember watching golf when I was a kid, and my parents, my dad and my grandparents used to watch it a ton. So on Sundays, we'd all be at my grandparents, and it would always be on. And, back then I didn't really love it because I was a little kid. But so I've been watching it a long time, and then really started getting into it maybe in the last 5 or 6 years, just watching it on TV. For me, it's just something that I love the aspect of golf that you can put it on the tournament. You can be doing other things. You can really just kind of pay attention when you want to pay attention and still get the full involvement of the tournament. So my wife hates it because I put it on probably way more than I should on Saturdays and Sundays, particularly weekends like last weekend with the Waste Management, because that one's just such a fun tournament. So I get really into it. I'm actually I do play a lot of daily fantasy with the golf, but I'd say I'm up and down on it. I don't know if my personal biases get in the way of reading the statistics and really, because I mean that's what drives fantasy golf, as you know. I mean, it's really all just statistics and who's doing what at what courses. So
right.
I feel like for me, a lot of times I get stuck in, I get in my own way with guys that I like or guys that I want to win. And then I don't do as well in the fantasy aspect. So, up and down, never bad, but usually, win some, lose some. So,
yeah, and maybe that's a positive for me then, since I'm not really a big fan. I don't really, everyone watched Tiger. I mean, that's kind of what really got me into it. I was a big Payne Stewart fan.
Payne Stewart's the man.
Yeah, it was a sad day when he died, but I loved his knickers that he wore.
Yeah.
I mean, it was fantastic. But then I kind of just fell out of it. Tiger kind of brought me back. I watched a little bit in high school, but it was more about playing. And what I like now is I will pick it up and turn it on every once in a while, because before I never would have thought to pay attention to actually what they're doing. So it has improved my golf game slightly. However, like you said, I am also not that great of a golfer. I shoot low 100s most of the time. So, not anything worth bragging about.
Yeah. I mean, hey, look, what is it the old saying, right? Golf and sex, the only two things that you don't need to be good at to enjoy. So, that's golf's definitely, it's great for that. It's just a great way to get out and spend a few hours doing something other than what you're supposed to be doing, I guess. So,
yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned the Waste Management Open. I mean, at TPC Scottsdale, and probably one of the better tournaments for a casual fan to watch. A lot of fun, craziness involved. The 16th hole, just the shouting. It's more of like that Happy Gilmore type aspect that you don't see at the other tournaments. Just jumping into that real quick, I did write an article breaking stuff down leading up to that tournament. I did have some hits. I only had one lineup, unfortunately, with Matsuyama. I said he was going to bounce back. I was positive he was going to bounce back, and yet I only played him in one lineup.
See, that's something
I did one.
I was just say that's something that for me, I always that's another thing that gets me, right. I have trouble expecting guys to win in back-to-back years.
Yeah.
So Matsuyama's a guy, I would have faded last week just because of that, because it's so hard to win a tournament in back-to-back years. You just, the list of guys that have done it is very small.
He was also coming off for him, two poor tournaments. I think he was in the 30s and the low 20s. So it's not like he was on a roll. I did say to fade Justin Thomas, so I am happy about that. He had bad course history here. Not a lot of course history, but the little bit that he had wasn't good. So he made the cut, but he wasn't really fantasy relevant. I think I had Bubba Watson on the article, but I wasn't too high on him. And that, I think, burned a lot of people. I can't believe he missed the cut. I could see him, being low, but not missing the cut.
It's tough. I think Bubba might be in for a tough year. I mean, we'll see. He really starts to turn it around at the Masters, so you got to kind of wait and see with him. He's not a guy I'm going to play a lot up until the Masters, and then after that, maybe. But he could be in for a real tough year this year. He did not look good this weekend, and if the swing starts to go for him a little bit, he does. So everyone talks about Bubba as the guy that never took a lesson and self-taught and, just a natural talent, knows how to shape the ball better than anyone else and all of these things, which is great until you start to struggle. And then without those lessons, without that background, without all that stuff, it's hard to pull yourself out of that. Then some other guys who go back to their coach and say, all right, what were we doing that I'm missing right now? So he's a guy that I could see if he gets into a funk, he could struggle for a little while.
Yeah, I probably will stay away from him unless he really starts showing me something. I'm trying to think of some of the other. I mean, Jordan Spieth, he had I don't even know where he finished, but I know he had a decent outing for fantasy. Not great. I want to say, if I remember correctly, he's probably in the 20s.
He finished tied for 9th in the tournament at 12 under.
Didn't make a top 10.
Yeah, he just did the top, snuck into the top 10. He had a good day. He had a good final round. Shot a 67, so 4 under in the final round. So he overall pretty good tournament for him. Not a lot of bogeys, which is really what you want to see out of him. That's when he starts playing consistent golf and was really the Spieth of what, a year ago or whatever, when he was just on fire and killing everyone and number one in the world. He's not making bogeys, right? I mean, his strength is he doesn't falter. He's so consistent. Hits the fairways really just straight off the tee and putts like crazy. The putting, I think, is a little bit off right now. I think that's kind of been a struggle. It hasn't been as solid as he was, but I fully expect him to be back as well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm one of those people, and I do this in NBA too. I typically don't pay up for the big names. I play a lot of cash games. I don't play GPP tournaments very much, and I like the balanced approach. So, like I said, I had one with Matsuyama, and I did have one Spieth tournament lineup, but I pretty much went under those top 3 guys. I did have a lot of John Ram, and unfortunately for me, I had a couple of Gary Woodlands who that was kind of a big bust at $9,000 salary.
It's a lot of money to pay. Yeah.
And the other guy that I had, and I didn't think he would be this highly owned, and he was actually the number 2, or no, I just heard today he was the number 1 most owned golfer on DraftKings last week, was Brendan Steele. Before I continue, you actually got me more into fantasy golf when we started the FLAFFL Golf League on the Avis PGA app.
Yeah.
And I used Brendan Steele a lot, and he did great for me in my spot starts. I mean, I think you only get to use him 4 times throughout the segment, but the guy's playing really well, and he started off fantastic. Kind of faltered there at the end, but it was still a good fantasy week for him.
Yeah, he's a guy who scores better than in fantasy, I think, than he does in the tournaments. He still finished 10 under with this one, but you look at his final round, he had 3 bogeys. He was 2 bogeys in the 3rd round. He's a guy that's a little up and down, but the bogeys don't necessarily kill you as much in fantasy golf as long as you can score in other places. And he had a lot of birdies. So, that kind of helps him. He's the type of guy that'll help in fantasy a lot. And, it's funny you mentioned that FLAFFL Golf Challenge. We actually had a lot of people during that complain because of the scoring, because you'd have guys that were like +3 that still had high scores just because of the way the format worked. Wasn't quite as tight as maybe a DraftKings is as far as the scoring is involved. But, and some people prefer to score it score fantasy golf with just money. Like what do they win, and kind of go through a year that way, which is that's a good way to do it too. But to me, that takes out any of the actual performance. That's just where they land. So right. I like the DraftKings scoring. I think it's a good blend.
Well, and I think going in, well, I'll discuss it a little bit, but going into this tournament, the AT&T Pebble Beach, with the way that it's set up, you kind of have to look for some of those higher scoring guys, whether they do well or not, just because of how the cut is this week. I don't want to go into it too much yet, but we'll touch on it when we start breaking that down. Just looking at the other guys that I was looking at, another one that stood out that I had on a lot of my lineups, and I'm going to totally screw up his name, so you correct me when I'm wrong, but it's Tony Finau.
Oh yeah, Finau. Yeah, Tony Finau. He's one of my favorites on tour right now. Young guy, very good, very talented player. But yeah,
yeah, that missed cut. I want to say I had him in 3 out of my 4 lineups, so did not do too well.
He's a guy that we'll get into this week. He's a guy, and he's not on the list of players that I was going to talk about anyway, but he's a guy that for this next tournament, I don't hate him, mostly because I think he has a good ability to bounce back. As a young guy, he really, he burned everyone last week for sure, but he'll play this tournament better. He's a pretty confident kid, and he's streaky, but I think he can turn it around in this one. So definitely a guy that while I won't talk about him later because he's on my list. I don't know if he was on yours, but he's a guy I wouldn't fade too much this week.
Yeah, kind of like quarterbacks. When it comes to daily fantasy, you kind of have to have a short memory.
Yep.
A lot of times you play the guy that killed you the week before, and he'll do well for you. So it just kind of depends. And from what I know of him, just from reading, like I said, I don't watch a lot of golf. Is that he's a really good ball striker. So
yeah.
It kind of just depends on if he's hitting his fairways and how good he comes back from scrambling. He just couldn't do that this past weekend. And another guy I'm going to completely butcher his name is Louis Oosthuizen.
Oosthuizen. Oh, come on. Even my wife would know that one. That's like her favorite player.
Well, he dominated for me this week.
Yeah, he's a great play. Another guy, he's actually been fairly consistent lately in the last few tournaments. I believe I could be a little wrong here, but overall, he's a guy that in general, he plays really well, very solid ball striker, very, very good, fairway accuracy, good on the green, great with the sand. His greens in regulation, I think, was over 80% for this tournament. So, he hit almost 65% of fairways. So overall, yeah, he's a guy that's been playing well. And I think you're going to be able to use him on a few tournaments coming up.
All right. Yeah, I have to throw this out there because as much as I want to say how good I did, the one guy who I did not play, and I made a bold statement in my article, was I was fading Ricky Fowler. He had second place finish last season.
Yep.
Going with Matsuyama in the playoff, I really thought it was just kind of a fluke. I just looking at the course history, he actually kind of struggled. The last time he did well was 2010. So I stayed away. Obviously, that wasn't the right decision. And then I'm definitely going to make mention I did not even consider him was Ben Na. I played out of his mind. I don't think very many people were on him. Probably won a lot of people some GPP tournaments if you did have him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, both of those guys. Look, you're talking about guys that haven't been playing great lately, and that You wouldn't have. I mean, Fowler's a guy I would have considered in my lineup last week only because of the second place finish last year, and because he's a guy that I think he's just one of those goofy guys that really gets up for tournaments like that where the crowd's really into it. And if he starts off hot, he's gonna be really good because the crowd will start to have his back. They'll be into his play, and he'll feed off the crowd. We've seen him do it with the Ryder Cup and all that stuff. He's just a guy that really gets into that type of thing. He likes the whole rah-rah stuff, I guess is the best way to put it. So for lack of any kind of actual analysis. So, I think that he's the type of guy that he got hot, started off well, and just kept it going from there.
He's more of like an energy type guy, feeds off the crowd.
Absolutely. So I could see why you would faded him. I certainly can't blame you for it. He's not a guy that you would expect given his recent play. He hasn't played well, so.
No. Yeah, it didn't bite me, like I said. So I had two lineups that cashed. One was at 421, one was at 419. Like I said, I typically play cash games, so I profited for the week. But they basically paid for my GPP lineups that I threw in. That did absolutely nothing. So.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a tournament for me. Like I think I told you off air. I didn't play any DraftKings this week, even though I kept my eye on it, just mostly because I love this tournament to begin with. And I think, like I talked about earlier, I get too into a tournament or into a couple players, I'm gonna throw money away anyway. But I there's definitely would have been a tough tournament for me. I like I said, I would have faded Matsuyama because of the recency. I would have. And the fact that he won last year, I probably would have faded Fowler. Although I don't know, maybe not. I think I would have played him, but it's really dependent on price. Although the one thing I will say about Fowler is I'm wondering if this will kind of jumpstart him into playing well. So I'd keep my eye on him for the next couple tournaments without playing him, because the cost is probably going to be a little higher than I'd like. But but I'd also want to keep an eye on him to see if he's a guy that's going to get hot and start really turning it on. The other thing that, I don't know, for me, the other things that I noticed from this tournament, you talked about Jon Rahm a little bit. This guy just continues to perform, and it's bordering on scary at this point. Like, I just did not expect this out of him. He's a great player, good young guy. You had some flashes last year. I didn't expect him to turn it on like this year. I thought maybe a year or two away for him because, golf's a sport that takes some of these guys a long time to get really into a groove. It's not very often that you see a Tiger Woods come right out of the gate, or even a Spieth was young for the guy for what he did. Usually it's that 25, 26-year-olds, is really, that's where it is. But so Rahm's a guy that I'm keeping my eye on. I think it'll fall off eventually. But you kind of got to ride it, I think, until it does.
I think you're right. Yeah.
The biggest problem.
Yeah, I do this in basketball a lot. You get guys that get on hot streaks and you play them, or baseball too. A lot of guys, baseball is very streaky, and you just get on guys, you play them until they fall off, and as soon as they do, you just jump ship.
Yep.
And that's kind of what you got to do with Rahm.
Yeah, and
just real quick, he's 3 for 3 on cuts, tied for 34. Obviously won the Farmers, and then he was tied for 16. He's averaging 92.8 DraftKings points. I mean, the guy's just having a great start to the year.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. The problem with him is the price now, right? I mean, it's gone up. It's going to continue to go up. I would imagine as long as he's playing. I don't know what I'm trying to think. I'm trying to see what his increase has been. Salary change is what, almost 1,100, I think, over the last month, maybe 2 months, I think. I mean, it's a lot. The last 10
they only have
yeah.
this. They only have the season up here right now, and he's 9,700, 9,200, 9,700, and they actually gave him $100 discount this week. He's down to 96, but
see, that's good.
Still the 5th highest golfer on the slate. So,
yeah, I think the stats I'm looking at here, it's actually through Fantasy Labs, which is a great site if you haven't checked it out. Definitely a lot of stats there, sortable, and they give you tables and stuff. So one of the things that they'll give you is is the average salary change. So this is since the last 10 tournaments, I think.
okay.
So yeah, so an $1,100 increase since 10 tournaments ago, I think, which makes sense because he started to pick it up, the wraparound season. So for him, yeah, I mean, top 5 though is the issue, right? So if he's a top 5 price, I don't know when it's going to end. Like we said, I think you got to ride it, but it's going to burn you. It's going to burn you at some point.
Right now, I'm probably looking to not use him in cash. I might consider him in a GPP tournament.
Yeah.
So I guess, unless you had anything else that you wanted to mention regarding the waste management tournament, we can jump in and take a look at the Pro-Am.
Yeah, absolutely. Pebble Beach Pro-Am's pretty great tournament. So definitely looking forward to talking about it. I mean, look, as far as courses go, it's the Pro-Am. So, we know what that entails, right? There's celebrities, there's, all these yahoos that are playing golf with the actual golfers. So there's some distraction factor there. There's, it's a 54-hole cut. So you get 3 full days to kind of wiggle around the leaderboard before you get cut. And with this course, there's 3 separate courses that all play in this location. There's Pebble Beach, there's Spyglass Hill, and then there's Monterey Peninsula. Each player gets to play all 3 courses, and then before they decide the cut. So that's interesting. They're all relatively short. They're all they're all small greens, hard to hit greens, difficult to play. As far as once you're on the green and reading them, so very difficult greens in general is something that sort of defines it. Monterey and Pebble Beach are both oceanside courses, so you got a lot of wind. And those kind of conditions can really play with you. There's a lot of elevation and things like that as far as with the ocean views. So it can be tough to play from a winds perspective on those ones. And then Spyglass Hill is definitely it's more of a, I want to say targety golf, but there are a lot of trees. It's definitely you gotta work on your placement because there are a lot of obstacles to get around. So you really have to pay attention to your placement, even though it's a smaller course. And then the greens are kind of up and down as far as talking about undulations and the overall landscape. So it can be a challenge, but in general, these players know it well. They're, for the most part, most of the players play here. There's not a lot of players that take this week off. So you should see a lot of good course history, low scores, even with the distractions that come with playing with all the businessmen and celebrities and whatnot. So, it should be a little more similar to the Phoenix as far as scores are concerned in last week's Waste Management Open than it was the week before. So, that's good. You're really going to see some lower scores, which is good. Some of the things that I look at when you're talking about daily fantasy or fantasy golf in general for this particular tournament, you want guys that birdie. Obviously, every week you want guys that birdie, but in this particular tournament, you're definitely looking at birdie percentage and and birdies are better scoring. You probably want to look at strokes gained on approach in this particular tournament, because you're going to see a lot of guys from off the green, right? And because the greens are so small, guys are going to miss left and right and over. So, being able to play around the green, those guys like Phil Mickelson that can hit that flop shot, those are the type of guys that are really going to score well, because they can come in to the greens from good angles, leave themselves with good short putts, and save par pretty well. So that's going to be huge. And then I think, for the rest of it, par 5 scoring is another one that I take a look at here. Whoever's scoring well on par 5s. There's a couple of holes on, one on Pebble Beach and one on Spyglass that are really going to be easy gets for as far as the longer hitters are concerned. So there could be some eagles there. Those are going to make a big difference this week.
Yeah, that you touched base on the two checkpoints that I kind of looked at. Was the par 5 birdie or better, and then the strokes gained by approach. I am still trying to figure out how to create my own projection system with this type of stuff.
Sure.
Not like basketball. So I'm hoping by the end of this year, I will have some type of projection system to kind of finagle and run away with next season. I see, and there's a few guys that I like, and we'll get into it in a little bit, that you kind of touched on it. Like you said with Phil Mickelson, who is going to save par. There's one guy in particular who's not a really high scoring fantasy guy as far as how DraftKings scores it, that I'm kind of interested in, and I guess I'll touch base on it when we get to that segment. The other thing, and I don't know if you heard about it, but there's possibly going to be some weather factors. I heard, and granted it's still Tuesday, so weather can obviously change. I live in Chicago. It changes on an hourly basis. Rain Thursday, possibly Friday, and high wind Saturday, Sunday. So it's definitely could come into play, especially for some of the people who may struggle scrambling.
Yeah, I think, if there's a high wind probability for Saturday, that's going to play a lot into this tournament, with the cut being the extra day. It'll be a lot of jostling on that Saturday, right? So a lot of guys going up and down as far as trying to make the cut, which obviously can have a huge impact on your lineup. So that's tough. That's a day you really want good conditions. You really want guys to go out and score, and let the guys who are built for the course that you're going to be picking take down the course and really get after it on that Saturday. So, that's tough. And then having a Sunday with a rough weather as well could be interesting. The rain, in particular, I don't know, on a Friday, I'd be more concerned if the rain shifted to Saturday and then really, you had rain and wind. That's going to be a tough combination on a Saturday moving day. So with a cut looming.
Yeah, definitely. If you don't have anything else as far as the courses and stuff are concerned, let's go ahead and what I usually do. We do this on the NBA video cast, is we kind of break it down into segments of as far as salaries, some guys that we like, and then if we have time, we can also, come up with some type of lineup if we want to throw something together. So, for purposes' sake, I don't know if you have your DraftKings open, but I'm looking at guys in the top range down, anything above 9,000. I, again, am a cash game player. I am considering playing Spieth. The guy is 12,000. He's the highest guy on the slate. Like you just said, I thought he finished lower, but he tied for ninth last weekend, and he's made all 4 cuts this season. He's made 4 top 4s this season. And on this course in particular, he finished 7th last year and 4th the year before. It just, to me, it screams he's going to win this one eventually.
Yeah. It's all going to be about his, hitting the fairways, right? I mean, for him, if he's consistently getting on the fairways, he's got the iron play and the overall short game to be able to really score well here. And I do think that he's been a little inconsistent off the tee lately, which makes me a little concerned. But in general, look, I'm not playing him. I'll leave him for you. Even, the 12,000 mark's a little bit too much for me. I just can't stomach it he's great. It's hard to find knocks for a guy like Jordan Spieth, but I think that really is just going to hamstring you from what I want to do the rest of the way, because I want, for me, the way I'm building my lineup in a tournament like this, I want 3 solid, steady guys, because this tournament, with all the other hoopla that comes with it being a pro-am, I think you can see some inconsistencies. So I really want the guys that I know are gonna score well. Some guys might just, I don't know. It has a propensity for a top guy to just sort of get down early and say, yeah, all right, I'm just going to hang out with my celebrity for the week, and we'll see what happens, kind of thing. I don't know. Sometimes the inconsistencies of this tournament will get me, and I don't know that I can spend the 12,000 on Spieth or the 11.8 or 11.6 for that matter for Dustin Johnson or Jason Day. They're too much money for me for guys that I love them. I love their play, but I just can't do it. I think it'll weaken the rest of my lineup too much.
I don't understand why Day's price is that high. I mean, maybe he just has really good course history. I didn't look into him at all because I'm not interested in him, like you said, based on the salary. He's only had, for this season, he's only had 1 round under 70. So to me, it's a little too risky, especially with my cash games. As far as the 12,000 goes, the only way I'll play him, and I'm considering it, like I said, and I might throw it in just one lineup, is because I'm projecting him to win. Because at 12,000, he has to win, or he's not going to hit value. The discount, if you're looking to pay for someone who's in that double-digit range, Snedeker's probably going to have the best value. I'm probably staying away from all 4 of those guys now that we're talking about it, to be honest. He's won this thing twice, though. So, I mean, he's got the course history. He's having a decent start to the year. He's got 2 top 10 finishes. He's 3 of 4 on his cuts. If I can make the salary work with other guys, I might consider it. But there's a couple other guys in the 9,000 range that I like a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't have him on my list of guys in this range that I would pick either, but he's definitely close. As far as, my next, one of the guys that I have on my list is Justin Rose at 9,200 and Phil Mickelson at 9,300. So those 2 guys, and I'll get into them in a little more detail, but you're talking about a savings of $700 there. And I think I put those 3 guys all around the same level. I think in this tournament for me, I think I would put them all, on the same plane. So for me, if you can play that, guys that you value similarly for less, why not? I think when I put together my full lineup, I actually had a lot of money left over. So I theoretically could have gone with Snedeker. And you're right, the course history is phenomenal. He loves the course. He putts very well on the course. He's won it twice, like you said. And And he had a top 10 at Torrey Pines. So he's, his overall play has been kind of up and down. He hasn't missed cut in the top 10. For me, the 10,000 priced him out a little bit more than I was willing to spend. But yeah, like I said, for me, Mickelson is a guy that I don't know how you can't play him in this one. He loves the spotlight. He loves tournaments like this. He loves all the schmoozing. He loves all the betting. He loves everything that comes with a tournament like this. Phil Mickelson's the type of guy, not to mention the fact that he's playing phenomenal. I mean, he has 3 consecutive top 20s. He's also a 3-time champ at this tournament. So, the course history's there. He's averaging almost 15 birdies per tournament over the last year. So good birdie percentage. 9,300, like we talked about, you're paying so much less than the Spieth, the Johnsons, and the Days, and even the Snedeker. With his scrambling ability and that around the green play that he's known for, he's a guy that I expect good things out of this week. I could see him winning the whole thing.
Yeah, my only fear with him, and as we're doing this, I'm actually kind of plugging in some guys and kind of building a lineup on the side here. Justin Rose was my main choice out of the top group, 9,000 and up. I also threw Mickelson in there as well. My only concern is, to me, it seemed like on day 4 at the Waste Management, he just looked fatigued. And I think that's kind of why he fell off at the end there. He still shot a 71. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't a horrible day, but in terms for him and how he was playing, not the best. My only fear is that, he's not a spring chicken, and coming off that, showing a little bit of fatigue, is that going to carry over into this week?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something to worry about. He's also playing a lot right now, right? We just said three consecutive top 20s. So he's playing a lot of golf in competitive situations where he's, still in it around the final day. So I agree with you. It's tough with him as far as his age and his, he did look fatigued a little bit last week, did look kind of fall off. So absolutely legitimate concerns. For this tournament, I think I could see him really pulling out an old classic Phil and pulling out a victory here. And then, maybe he decides to take a couple weeks off or something after that, but because he might need it. But yeah.
Might be a good choice. You say a lot of guys don't take off for this. I'm kind of surprised someone like him didn't take off for a tournament like this, just because it is a pro-am.
Are you kidding? You know how much money he's going to win gambling this week?
He could have just rode around on his cart, though, and just been like, putting money on other people.
Money on people. Yeah, that's true. He could do that. Might have been smarter. Yeah. He's another guy too. And one other thing we didn't mention about this tournament that we probably should is the whole West Coast thing. There are some guys that just play better in the West Coast tournaments. So yeah, I mean, and he's one of them.
Didn't even think to put that into consideration.
Well, you'll see when we get a little lower. One of the guys that I'm going to talk about is definitely falls into that category. So we'll get there.
Okay. So the only one we didn't mention, we did mention him, was Ram, and I don't think. I think we both kind of agree. You gotta ride the hot hand, but I'd rather have the savings with Rose and Mickelson at 92 and 93 versus the 96 price. So we can move on down into the 8,000 range. I'll let you go first if there's anyone in here you wanted to make mention of.
Yeah, there's 2 guys. So we're talking. Are we talking just 8,000, or what are we doing here? So I had a range of 75 to 8,900, right? So
yeah, let's do that.
So the first guy is in the $8,000 range, and for me, Matt Kuchar is a guy that I'm highlighting for this tournament. I think that The guy's an absolutely phenomenal iron player, and he's been hitting it even longer off the tee lately, which is weird for a guy, getting up in his career. But he scrambles incredibly well, and he shouldn't have too much trouble with the wind and the small greens. For him, I think it comes down to will come down to putting. And this is one of those guys that I'll tell you right now, this is what screws me in daily fantasy is I just like Matt Kuchar. I like rooting for the guy. I think he's a good guy overall in general. So I'm always pulling for him. Luckily for me, I think he's playing well. So that definitely helps. He's comes in with a 94.5 points, per match average. So, when you're talking about daily, that's pretty solid right there. So he's a guy that's definitely playing well. This is a tournament that he will enjoy and that he's well suited for. So he's a guy at 8,600. I think you can really, you pair him with Mickelson and Rose and then Kuchar. I think you have those three that I'm talking about that I want steady performers.
Yeah, I'm looking here. One of the things I like to do, I'm just going to make a quick mention of it, when I build my lineups, I mean, I look at golf odds. I look at Vegas and see where they have people ranked and where they think who's going to win. And it doesn't always work, but it has the first two times I've done it so far this season. And I try to keep everyone within 50 to 1. If that means not taking one of those guys that are 7 or 8 to 1 odds, and more having the 15 to 35, 15 to 40 range. And if I can build my whole entire lineup with the majority of those types of guys, I feel pretty confident that at least I'm going to have a chance of 6 guys making the cut. And if 6 guys make the cut, you got a chance, especially in cash games. It's more of the GPP lineups, and that's where I don't do it in basketball, and I'm probably not going to do it in PGA either, is play much of it. But when I do, that's when you need to hit on the guys like Ben Na from last week, who, I'd never heard anybody mention. For my cash games, like I said, I try to keep it in the top there. And looking at this, Kuchar's at 30 to 1, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, tied for the 9th best odds to win this tournament. So definitely not a bad choice at only 8,600.
Yeah, that's a great point because as we know, obviously, FLAFFL is a fantasy football podcast, so it's in our blood. It's what we do. I think I'm cheating on them by talking golf at all, but I can't help it. So, but when you're talking about
does Sal and Steve know that you're doing this?
Yeah, I told them like an hour ago, and they were like, "Oh, you're gonna suck." I was like, "Oh, thanks, you guys are great." Yeah. So, look, but anyway, so football's in our blood, right? And as well as I do, one of the best things to do when you're talking about fantasy football is look at the odds, or more specifically, look at the over/under, right?
Yeah.
You want players that are playing in the games that have the most likely outcomes of a high score. So, not like a 58.5 over/under for the Super Bowl, for example.
Right.
But so that's a great point by you. I mean, you definitely want to look at what Vegas thinks and who they have in this one, because they're not stupid. They know what they're doing most of the time. So if there's good odds on players, there's reasons for it. It could be just that they expect people to bet on those guys. But I think when you're talking about a guy like Kuchar, who may or may not have a heavy bet favorite, I think it's even more accurate when you're talking about them giving him good odds to win.
Yeah, definitely.
You're always going to see a Spieth and a Day and a Johnson up at the top there. I mean, because it's where people are going to bet, so you're going to see the best odds to win there. But as you start to get down, I think that's definitely a much better indicator. And I think your 50 to 1 is probably not a bad mark. You may have to go lower than that from time to time, but it's a good start.
I'm just looking at a couple names here. So one of the ones that stands out to me, right actually underneath Kuchar, is JB Holmes. He has yet to get a top 10 finish this year, but he's made all 3 cuts. He's playing fairly well. And at this tournament, he's only missed the cut once. He's got 2 top 15s. It was a while ago, but he took second in 2010. I just think there's some good value there.
Yeah, I mean, he'll get birdies, no question about it. This guy, Holmes hits it a mile off the tee. He's one of the big, longer drivers in the field. So he's going to crush the ball off the tee. He's going to have some short shots in with the shorter course. So he's going to make some birdies. The only, knock with him is his accuracy. He's going to be a little inaccurate from time to time, but he has been scrambling well lately. So he's a guy you could look to see. I mean, definitely not a bad call there at all, in my opinion. And looking at your odds here, like you 30-1, right? So pretty solid on the odds too.
Yeah, I'm looking just at a little note here, and so he led the tournament actually last weekend with 25 birdies.
Mm-hmm.
The only problem is that he had 12 bogeys and 2 double bogeys. So
that's it, right? He's an inconsistent guy. When he's on fire, though, he's unstoppable as far as scoring from a fantasy perspective. So if he gets another guy that if he gets hot, you're going to be in good shape with him in your lineup.
Yeah, and like we talked about earlier, with them being able to play 3 full rounds before worrying about a cut, you can kind of look at playing guys who are better scorers for fantasy versus actual results as far as the rankings go once everything's done. And he might fall in line with that a little bit more than some of these other guys. Like I say, he doesn't even have a top 10 this year, but as long as he can be consistent enough to make his cuts, he'll finish high enough with fantasy points to give you a good chance.
Yeah, absolutely. Another guy that I was looking at in this range that for me, it's kind of a dart throw because, I don't know. He hasn't really played much recently. Jim Furyk at 7,500. He's a guy. Well, I think this will be his first tournament coming off this season. So he hasn't played in a while since I'm trying to remember which tournament he played last year. The last one, I think he was in was he at the Deutsche Bank? It might have been the Deutsche Bank, but either way, he looked good when he came back off the injury last year. And, he's just a very consistent guy. He's only missed the cut 2 times in 19 tries at this tournament. So he likes the tournament, usually plays it well. Overall, a consistent guy. I know he isn't, obviously without playing much, hard to go off of as far as a recency.
Right.
But it's still a guy that I would feel comfortable playing, even though we haven't seen him, just because he's usually so consistent. And at 7,500, he's not killing your lineup to get him in there, in my opinion. He's the one guy that as I'm building out a lineup, I keep wanting to put him in, and then I keep taking him out, and then I keep putting him in. And where I save money in some areas, if he's a guy that I can afford to go a little higher than him, I might. But then again, as we're looking through some of these guys, there's not a lot of guys in that middle range from him on up to the high range that I like better. So I'm comfortable with him at 7,500.
Yeah, I've heard his name mentioned a few times as well. Like you said, and he might be the good tournament play for the casual fans that are out there that you don't know a lot about how he's going to be because there isn't a lot of recent history. Obviously, I mean you can still go off course history, so his ownership levels might be lower just for that. So yeah, I would definitely consider playing him as well. before we move down too far, what do you think about Webb Simpson? I struggle.
Yeah,
I
everyone
struggle,
struggles with Webb Simpson.
but he's off to a great start this year, especially fantasy wise. He's made all 3 cuts. Obviously, he was in the playoff with Matsuyama this past weekend. The guy's averaging 93 fantasy points on DraftKings. His price isn't too bad for what he's been doing. I just don't know if I could trust him to maintain that.
I wouldn't. And for me at this point, the price isn't, like you said, isn't bad at 8,200, but for me, it's a little too much for a guy that I think will cool off. He's such a streaky player, in my opinion, and just so up and down. I don't know that you can really trust him. It's a $300 increase from last week. So if you got him at 7,900 last week and with the tournament that he had, I think you hit your peak, right? I think you got your best value for the price for him for a little while. I probably will check out on him for a few tournaments, see what happens, because there's a fall coming. He's that type of guy where I could see him taking a step back and really just having a bad tournament, and this could be one of them. The good thing, like you mentioned about this tournament, is with the 3 days, so he could still score okay,
right?
But I wouldn't trust it. I think it's a little bit too much money for a guy that's never cracked the top 25 at this tournament. So he's a guy that I would be concerned with.
I did not have anyone else really in that range. I might consider Patrick Reed. I don't know, kind of like Webb. I mean, he's more consistent, I feel like, from a golf perspective, but he's not a guy who's going to get you a lot of scoring. He's kind of up and down on the board with that. He completely fell off in the final round last week. I think he hit 6 or 7 bogeys. He shot a 76. So,
yeah, I mean, look at his salaries over the last few tournaments, right? I mean, you're just looking at DraftKings, and I'm looking back to 12-1, the Hero World Challenge. He's 8,600, and then he plays a European tournament, and he's 12-100, and then he plays in the Tournament of Champions in January, and he's 9,500, and then he's the Career Builder, he's 11-2. I mean, even the salaries are up and down. And there's a reason for that, right? It's because he's a guy that
doesn't know what to do with him.
Yeah, exactly. They have no idea. So if DraftKings doesn't know what to do with him, what the hell am I going to do? He's a guy that I like as a golfer, but I still don't play him very often in DraftKings because I feel like the times I play him, he plays well or poorly, and then the times that I don't, he plays really well. So he's just. Yeah, he burns you when he misses, and it sucks. So at that price, I probably stay away from him, which means he'll probably play well. So for those of you listening, maybe check him out this week. Yeah, I didn't have anyone else in that range either. Most of the guys, you could see a guy like a Jimmy Walker's at the top. He plays, he's a guy that has that same short around the green game that Phil has. He's very good in that area. So, but 8,800 seems like a bit much for him. We talked about Tony Finau a little bit. Good young player, but again, 8,100 might be a bit too much for him. So, I don't see a lot of value in this range. Which is why I kind of lean more towards grab a couple of the not super high price guys, but guys in that higher tier, and then maybe 1 or 2 of these guys and see if you can sort of catch fire in a bottle with one of them.
Yeah, I completely agree. All right, so let's move down to the next range, which will be basically anyone 7,400 and lower. Not necessarily all punt options. If you way down to the 6,400 range min salary, then you're obviously thinking punts. But there's some guys I like here right in that 73 to 7,000 range. One guy who's been doing well, and you had mentioned earlier as far as birdies go, and this is something that he's been doing well with, is Adam Hadwin. Put up 66 actually, I thought it said 68. 66 in the last round of the Waste Management tournament, and went all the way from 36th up to finish 12th. It's 17 birdies in the tournament, an eagle. So as far as scoring goes, I think he's someone you can consider using if you need someone in this range, especially with that 3 days versus the 4. Let's see. The other guy that stood out to me was Sean O'Hare. Didn't have the best outing last week. Had 8 bogeys, but I can't seem to find my notes on it. But this is what happens when you write chicken scratch. My wife would kill me as a 3rd grade teacher. I mean, just looking at him, he's got an 11th finish, a 9th finish, and a 47. He's made all 3 cuts. He's got 1 top 10 at 7,300, averaging 86 fantasy points on DraftKings. So, I mean, he's got the ability to get you some points.
Yeah, he's definitely got good form going on with and definitely scoring well in DraftKings for sure. So there's definitely a lot to like there. I think, you're right. Well, last tournament wasn't his best. I think he finished with this last round was a 71. Had a decent amount of birdies. Just he looked like he just kept hurting himself with bogeys. Had a double in there as well. So he's just up and down a lot. Could have been a much better tournament for him, but he's definitely a guy that's played well recently. So for if you're the type of player that looks at form when you're building out your lineup, he's definitely a guy that he's not going to hurt you. Very consistent course history. So I think he's 9 straight cuts, including a top 10. So while he did have a little bit of a tough week last week, I think not a bad play here at that price.
Yeah, and I think, and I keep preaching it, but I play a lot of cash games. So to me, a solid floor is more important to me. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's all about putting for him, and if he can putt, he'll be good. So for me in this range, one of the guys that I was looking at right at that 7,300 is Pat Perez. He might actually fall off the radar for some people a little bit. He's the guy that I mentioned earlier about the West Coast thing. He just plays well on this side of the country for whatever reason. Always plays well in the earlier tournaments of the year. And, he might fall off a little bit from people because he withdrew last week. He had a shoulder injury, so he withdrew from the tournament. So didn't register a score there. And ultimately, I think a lot of people who are looking at past tournaments may see that and get scared off. It looks like he's ready to go from an injury perspective. So he's a guy that, is going to play and averaging over 12 birdies per round. He has 2 top 10 finishes in the last 3 years here. So he's a guy that knows the course, plays it well. 7,300. I think he's a good buy. Hasn't really played great from a fantasy perspective on the scoring level from, for this year. But overall, he has some good games, and he played well at the Farmers, played really well at the Tournament of Champions. So he's just a little bit up and down. And I think this is a tournament that you can see him perform in, and that's a good value for him.
Yeah, I like that his ownership would probably be lower with that shoulder.
Very, very much so. One other guy that I'll mention in this range, probably the last guy that I'll talk about, and he's another guy. Maybe I'm biased because I like him as a guy. I think he's a good guy and such a solid golfer. Steve Stricker is way down there at 6,600. And for me, this is a guy that, for those of you who don't follow golf regularly and really, or you're just getting into it, this is a guy that used to play a ton of golf and just got kind of tired of it. He's a little older. He got tired of it. So he really reduced his schedule. So he only picks tournaments that he likes now, which to me, if you're looking at it from a fantasy perspective, that's phenomenal. Great. Only play the ones you like because
exactly.
That means you like the course, you enjoy it, you want to be out there, right? It also doesn't do too much for the recency bias. So for those people who really think, just look at what guys are doing lately, he may fall under the radar. And at 6,600 for a tournament like this, he is just so consistent, particularly with his irons and his putter, that he's the exact type of guy that I want. In this type of tournament. His first start of the year was last week. So there's no history on him right now, which is, I think, good. I think he finished 41st. So not a great finish, but you can chalk that up to shaking off the rust for the season. And he should come out firing here. He's just a guy that I really enjoy watching. And for 6,600, I might as well have him in my lineup.
Yeah, no, as soon as you said it, it made me chuckle just because, I wasn't a big golf. Like I said, I'm not a big golf follower, but I mean, I still know who he is. So
yeah,
he's been around the block a few times.
Yeah, he's been around for a long time. But like I said, he's just so consistent. So
I'm just looking through my notes. There's only a couple names that I had written down here. And I'm just going to go through them real quick because we're getting a little bit long. But Matt Jones, he's got a 7th and 11th place finish here. Didn't have a great fantasy point weekend last week, but he did tied for 36 at the Waste Management. Shane Lowry I have written down here as a solid option. Made both cuts so far this year. Just someone kind of more consistent to use. He's got a 16th and a 33rd finish. Vaughn Taylor, the only reason I wrote it down and kind of goes against what we were talking about earlier on why we didn't use Matsuyama, but the back-to-back win.
Sure.
Yeah. And he is making his cuts. So he's got 4 cuts already he's made this year, but he just not great. 24th, 57th, 41, 56, or 52nd. And really it's his bogeys that are killing him. But like we discussed earlier, well, they hurt more in DraftKings than they do in the that fantasy league that we're in. But for someone who costs $6,900, if you can get 70 to 75 DraftKings points, it's not, that's hidden value, especially for cash games.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good payoff.
But that was it. That's pretty much all I had. Those are the guys I'm focusing on. So, I don't know. Yeah. Do you want to run through and try to put something together real quick? I can punch it up on my screen here.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let me. I'm actually going to share my screen so the people at home can see it. Maybe if I can figure it out. Okay. All right. Are you seeing my DraftKings?
Yep, absolutely.
Right, I'm going to clear this because that was what I was playing with there.
Sure.
All right. So I'm just going to throw this name on here. And you know what we'll do is we'll just go back and forth. And I'm going to actually let you go first.
All right. So I'm gonna take let's see, with my first pick then, if I can. You know what? I'm going to go with Phil because I talked about him a lot. I think he's a great value. So.
All right. And I'm actually going to pair him with Justin Rose. So.
There you go. It's a great start. I like it so far.
Yeah.
So, Kuchar, I think, fits in well with those 3, like I said. So I think that's a good way to start off the 3 lineup. Yep.
I'm good with that. I swear I had somebody in mind. Let's see if we go. Yeah, we'll go JB Holmes. There's still plenty of salary left at 7,200.
Okay. Let's see. So what are we at here? We're looking at we still got a 7,250 average, right? So we could still spend a little money. I might go a little over that though and take Perez. Okay. Pat Perez at 7,300.
That I'm going to round that off with we'll just throw in Matt Jones.
There you go. All right.
I'm good with that, and I'm gonna save that and play that later. Just not in our league if you end up jumping in that this week.
All right, perfect. Yes, I am in there this week. So, and I'm actually putting that together in a lineup for myself as well. So, we'll hopefully we'll do well with it.
God, I just looked at my horrible NBA lineups. I cashed on FanDuel. I checked that while we were talking. But, looks like I probably fell short here. So, all right.
Perfect. So,
go back here. Turn screen share on. All right. Well, that wraps up our first and hopefully many of our PGA breakdowns. Enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, you can reach out to me on Twitter at ShySportsNut25, or you can reach out to the site's Twitter handle, House Money DFS. Hopefully, I will have time to write a PGA article. Might not, since we did the pod. I might just post it on the site so everyone can just listen in. Kevin, I appreciate you coming on, and we'll hopefully get to do this again next week. What you do as you guys do in FLAFFL House, your closing statements.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. It's a lot of fun. Hopefully we'll get to do it again. That would be great. Those other FLAFFL guys don't let me talk about golf too often. Sal and Steve are bitter old men when it comes to that type of thing. So even though they're not even that old, Sal's old. But yeah, if you want to check out FLAFFL, we definitely appreciate it. It's FLAFFL House Podcast. You can find us on iTunes or on Stitcher, SoundCloud, any of those. You can go to FLAFFLhouse.com. You can check us out there. You can check me out on Twitter at Wally Central, or the FLAFFL House account at FLAFFL House. So we're all over the place there. We're definitely football, focused, but I'm happy to answer any golf questions as well. If you have actual golf questions, if you have daily golf questions, go to Rob. But for me, we can talk regular golf.
All right. Well, sounds good. Enjoy your night, and we'll hopefully be back next week.
All right. Thanks.